Welcome to season 2 of the Jeremy Mullins podcast, where we take a deep dive into different educational topics to help you optimize your life. I am Jeremy, strength and conditioning coach, registered dietitian, and I'm here with my friend today, Miss Sierra, who is a pediatric nurse practitioner. Did I get that right?
You got it right. Yeah.
Pediatric? She's a kids
Pediatric.
nurse practitioner. Let's just go that way. Awesome. And how dare I say retired competitive CrossFitter? Are we going to come back?
I think there's a comeback coming in late fall, so
Okay, so I won't
don't
use the
call it
retire.
retirement yet.
Yeah, I won't use the term retired then. Yes. CrossFitter at heart, functional training athlete. We worked together at First Form for a little while, which was fun as we were building the corporate wellness, building up some of the kid stuff, inside the program. And then both of us had, was the third baby for you too?
Third baby. Mhm.
Yeah. Both of us had a third baby, and that kind of changed life plans a little bit.
Sure did. Sure
Changes
did.
a lot of things, right?
There's a surprise baby too?
Ours wasn't a surprise. I mean, we were trying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely a curveball, but
Yeah,
hey,
yours was a surprise, right?
yeah.
You know
Yeah.
how it happened? No, I'm just kidding. It's PG-13. PG-13 podcast. You know.
Honestly, no, it doesn't make sense, but that's a topic for another day. But
You're like,
speaking of, I had just gotten back from California from competing at semifinals in CrossFit, and a week later found out I was pregnant. So
he was cleaning and it just went off, right? Like
pretty much.
pretty much just happened. But hey, guys, Sierra is the owner of Bite Size Wellness, and I'm just going to overview this real bit. It's education for our kids, and not necessarily education for our kids, education to us parents on how to make sure that our kids are eating, correctly, and a lot of just tips that come up, right? Because there's not a lot of, and I'll speak from experience with this, like in school as a dietitian, like I don't remember tips, tricks of how to help children. Like there was your standard American Dietetic Association recommendations for age groups, but I don't remember like anything being in schooling on how to get kids, through certain things, right? Like I guess the only thing I'm remembering, maybe this is just me and my mental recall, was like food jacks. Like
Yeah.
that's the only thing I remember is like a definition for children. And then of course there was, what is the expected certain percentage of calories and nutrients and that type of stuff. But there wasn't a lot of education on, hey, how do you get your kids to eat better? Like what are the tips and tricks to do that? So that's what we're going
Yeah.
to talk about today.
Yeah, no, I think and when you even think about like elementary and grade school and high school education, there's some, right? But it's mostly like your generic recommendations and kids don't have a ton of control over what they go home to and so I think it just a lot of it comes down to the parental support and most of what I where I found the greatest need for this was I worked pediatric obesity medicine for almost 4 years and in that it's discovering a lot of things dealing with adolescents and even older children that are suffering with obesity. A lot of it was rooted in what started in early childhood and ironically enough those are some of the hardest years, right? Infancy, toddlerhood, early childhood. As parents, like, we're most sometimes in survival mode, and having the support to navigate, like laying the foundation for eating behaviors and eating patterns and what that does for down the road. So it just kind of started sparking something in me. It's like, okay, well, if we understand that the first 1,000 days of life, which research supports this, the first 1,000 days of life are the most impactful on eating preferences, disease risk, and just behaviors in general. So that would be from preconception, well, conception until about the age 2.5, right? So these are the most critical years for eating behaviors and preferences. But yet we're not focusing the emphasis on quality of nutrition, supportive feeding behaviors, and then parental support through this. Which research also supports then that those first 1,000 days, what we do or don't do can put us at risk for developing things like obesity,
Yeah.
diabetes, heart disease, all of these chronic health conditions that we're now seeing in children as they're progressing into adolescence, when it can actually be rooted back into early childhood. And so that's kind of where all of this sparked for me, is getting to the root of it and getting ahead of it, right? Because we absolutely need some of the things that are out there now. But how do we get ahead of it, and how do we support parents and set them up for the most optimal success in doing it? So, anyway, that's a little bit about.
Yeah. No, no, and like you're younger than I am, in the sense of like, let's think about this. Obesity rates in children. Like I didn't even think back to like, grade school for me, which, once again, reference here, born in the 1980s, 1980 exactly. So, and that's a funny story. So you remember Bailey? That was dietitian, our first intern. We both know this. We're talking about a little bit. I remember the workout that we had with Bailey, where
Uh-huh.
she was seeing some. She was seeing some stars.
That was Murph on steroids. Like, that was real
Yes.
bad.
So it was me, you, her. I can't remember if we had other teammates, but it was a team workout. But my story on Bailey was she wore this 1998 necklace to work all the time, right? And finally, after she was hired, I was like, "Hey, what does that mean?" She was like, "It was the year I was born," and I'm like, "Ah, yeah, I graduated high school then." That was my first like real thing of like, man, I'm getting old and we're hiring dietitians that were born
When you
when I
graduate.
graduated high school.
Yeah.
But what I want to go with is like I remember back in elementary school, like and I was overweight to a degree, but not what I would consider obese. And we might have only had like one student that I would consider obese in our class, right? But then we look around, you mentioned this earlier, the rates of obesity, the rates of diabetes, the rates even like hyperlipidemia, insulin resistance, like we're seeing that so much more now in our kids than we ever have.
Yeah. 100%. And when you think about 40% of our youth have at least one chronic disease, and that includes things like eczema, asthma, allergies, and those types of things. But 40% of our children. And obviously, there are a lot of factors that play into that, right? Environmental toxins, toxin overload in general, environment, so many other things, but diet and lifestyle are a pretty huge component in that, and especially the things that we're exposing our kids to at a very young age. And so, I helped build up this obesity clinic where I was working, and kids were coming out of the woodworks. I had 3 and 4 year olds weighing 120 to 130 pounds. And it was just in that moment for me that I realized that, wow, we need to do better for parents. Because as practitioners, right, like you're saying, like there's very minimal training in dietetic school or even in like NP school that kind of helps us support parents the best that we can. And like, making sure that, yes, they have the resources that they need, especially, there are different populations of people who need more resources and things, but making sure that they have the resources that they need, because that's a big thing. But giving them the education around nutrition, because that's what is the foundational thing for our kids. One of the, I can't say all of, but one of the foundational things for our kids and their health. So,
And a lot of that comes up in how you were raised and what was the culture, right? Because a lot of times maybe your parents didn't know better because where'd your parents learn from? They learned from their parents,
yeah.
right? And especially, and yes, now I think there is more nutritional education. There's more education in everything that's available now, good or bad, right? Like good,
Right.
you can get your hands on it. Bad, like who is teaching? Where is it coming from?
Right.
Right? But I think of like a lot of behaviors that come with food related, especially in our children. It comes from, you eat like what your parents ate, right? You eat based on that culture, that's in there. So I think it is, very important. And, going back to it, like that's where I call it the P2 concept, like a primary protein and produce at each meal or each snack. And I don't think that should change, for our children, right? In the sense of like, hey, they should be eating the same things that we're eating. And I think a lot of times it's just easier, just get them, unfortunately, like fast food, or probably what's even worse is like some of the direct food things that's made for kids.
Yes, you nailed it. And your kids need the same nutrients that you need, maybe just in different quantities. So the macros that we talk about, the micros that we talk about, your kids need them too. And it's not that they're just kids and they can eat whatever, their metabolism will catch up or whatever the case may be. Like their little bodies are the foods that's going in is what's creating their bones, their muscles, all of helping their brain develop and grow. Like they need the same nutrients that your body needs for health. And what is the hard part is one, yes, food marketing. It plays against us, right? Like parents have grown up in a culture that they were used to. And when I was growing up in the 90s, I was born in the 90s. Sorry, Jeremy.
Ah,
That truthfully, the 80s and 90s when like food marketing and things kind of started peak like climbing. And that's when like the processed food started really becoming directed towards kids and just kind of become accepted. If you think about that, like our kids need kid foods. And we have developed this mentality as a society that kids eat kid foods. Well, your kids don't have to eat kids food, and I would argue that they shouldn't eat kids foods depending on what types of foods that you are buying. But food marketing plays against us. And then, right, you tie into, well, you mentioned food jags a little bit ago, but like you tie in the picky eating, which is at some level developmentally normal and appropriate for kids to go through some level of pickiness. Parents are busy. They don't know what they should be feeding. The marketing's telling them they should be feeding them kids food. And then they're like, okay, easy button. I just want
easy.
you to eat and I just want you to not be melting down in the kitchen. And so um there's a lot of variables at it, but yeah, I think that food marketing is one of them.
And we do it as adults. We have food jags as adults. We go through phases that we like to eat something over and over again. So like that's normal, right? And yeah, I agree. Like it just becomes easy and by no means, okay, with our three kids, guys, it's not that they don't ever get fast food, right? We just have certain rules, and the rules, for example, like if they want a dessert or a candy, it's not yes or no. It is, did you eat a primary source of protein and produce 3 times a day, and did you work out?
Mhm.
Or PE extra I don't want people to think like you make your kids work out. Were they active? Did they get outside and play? Did they ride their bicycle? Did they have PE at school? Did they play at recess? And if they answer to all 3 of those, then they don't necessarily even have to answer. Ask us. Like they don't have to ask for, a little small drumstick or ice cream or, a piece of candy, right?
Right.
Because what we're teaching them is that like, yes, those are sweets that you should have every now and again. And as long as you have ate your basics, which for us is educated in protein and produce, then they can have that. Okay. And then the other thing, and before we kind of get into to your tips here, what we found works well is like, they have the protein that we have, right? They have the produce that we have. But then if they're wanting something else, right? Mac and cheese or mashed potatoes that maybe like I'm not having or Katie's not having, we will still fix that for them, right? But they have to have, once again, the foundation there first, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, and that I call that considerate, not catering. And so when you are thinking about, right, what are we having for dinner? And that's usually what I recommend parents do is like think about what you want to be having at meals, not thinking about what your kids will eat. Because if we're always thinking about what our kids will eat, well, we're not giving them the opportunity to experience other foods. And that's usually the habit or the cycle that we fall into is because we're as parents, we just want them to eat. We're genuinely worried, making sure that they're getting at least something in their belly that they're not going hungry. And so it's like, okay, well, I don't want the fight. I know they won't eat this. I'm just going to fix them something that they will eat. And so that just kind of happens on repeat. But instead, I usually challenge parents to say, okay, think about instead what you want to eat and make that. It doesn't mean you can't add something to it, like you said about the mashed potatoes, the mac and cheese, that you know that they will eat also, but you're giving them the opportunity to choose the foods
Yeah.
that the rest of the family is having. And then so if we're not giving them the opportunity to at least experience them, then they're never going to learn to like them. So that's usually where I recommend is like let's get back to making just one meal for the whole family, and the components are the same: the protein, the produce, the fiber. Um, those basics are there, and then they get to decide. So Ellen Satter's division of responsibility is parents are responsible for when, where, and what shows up on the kids' plate. The kids get to decide if and how much. And that's it. And when you can kind of lay that foundation of like, I'm in control of what shows up on their plate. They don't have to absolutely love every single thing I'm making, but this is what's available.
Yeah.
They get they can eat it or they don't. That's fine. That's their decision. But when you have stuck to your responsibilities, they have stuck to their responsibilities, and you have set a consistent routine of like an eating structure, they can trust that, oh, if I don't eat this in 2 hours or whatever, it's going to be dinner time. So it's totally fine.
and we do this, and you can correct me if we're right or wrong or on the right path. Like, but if they're not hungry for what we prepare, what we have, that's okay. But you're going to eat that when you do get hungry later on this evening before you have anything else. Right. And going back to it, guys, like my kids right now, they're in a food jag of popcorn. Like that's kind of their thing at bedtime or at the evening time. They're like, they want a bag of popcorn, right? Which is nice because I'm like, okay, like it's not always, I'm using drumsticks because we've had those for the little tiny, not the large drumstick that's 350 calories, but the bite-sized ones, right? But like they're in the popcorn. That's kind of their go-to now. And I'm like, man, like here they are eating 3 good quote meals a day, protein produce, like they move most days. I'm like, if they're gonna have some popcorn's gonna be their vice when it comes to food, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
And we've done good, like, we don't we never introduced. So when I say we don't allow, I don't like that term, but we really never introduced like sodas and juices. So
Right.
both our kids are like water,
Yeah.
like that's what they drink. And they've tried like Marielle tried, she wanted to get is it Fanta? It's like the orange Fanta. Am I saying that right? Like she
Mhm.
wanted to try that at like a party the other day and then she got it, but like she barely drank any of it. She's like, it's just too sweet.
Yeah.
So it's not like we don't let them experience it, but like they consistently would say 99% of the time drink water, which is nice to see from that aspect.
Yeah. Couple of things that you mentioned there is, you know, when it comes to they didn't eat dinner, we offer it later. It really just truthfully depends on like one, how soon are they coming back asking for a food?
Yep.
Two, was there something that you knew that they would eat at that meal, right? If you served all meals or all foods you know they weren't going to eat, well then maybe offer something else. But every family is going to be so different. So
Very good
it's
point.
not black and white. And so if that works for you guys, perfect. We do something similar. And then we have are shifting away from the bedtime snack because I think that got too reliant on if I don't eat dinner, I'm gonna get a bedtime snack. So lots of just different things that you can work with that approach. But yeah, to your point of like similar to what I just mentioned earlier, if we don't introduce things, they don't know can't learn to like them. Well, if we also don't introduce things, they don't know that they need them, right? So like with juice, if we never introduce it and we make water the primarily thing that's always available, well, again, it just comes back and getting rooted in like we are in control of what they are getting exposed to. Um, and they learn the off of
I
that.
was just say great perspective, and you caught me with like a black or white there, right? So, saying that, we make our kids, consume dinner before they can have anything else. That's with the assumption that we know they have ate those items before. So it's
Right.
maybe not like some new dinner that we've never fixed before, right? And then we're like, yeah, hey, here you're gonna try this, but no, this is like the staples, right? And because we're pretty efficient of like we cook 2 or 3 days a week only, and then we just cook extra.
Right.
So like if they're not eating their tacos that they normally eat, and the taco meat, then we're just gonna be like, yeah, you're gonna eat that later before you can have, something. So very good point from that aspect. But I want to pause and I'm gonna let you repeat it. What was it? Um, you control what was the adults? What do they control?
So
Because I want this to be
division of responsibility.
okay. And they control what 3 things?
So parents are in control of when, where, and what shows up on the plate. So when are we having a meal? What are we gonna have? And where are we having it? That's it.
Awesome. So that is going to be tip number one, just to
Mhm.
keep us on point and on time, because I know we could talk for a very long time. Not saying that, that we won't have you back on for more episodes, but I want
Yeah.
two more of your best tips, right? So I think I'm going to title this, 3 tips to help our, children in their eating patterns, right? So give us 2 more of your best tips that you have or that has been working well for you, recently helping others.
Yeah, so I think definitely division of responsibilities is number 1, right? Because why that works is it helps you remove the pressure for your kids, and when they have that pressure removed, they can get out of that fight or flight mode when they come to the table, and you no longer have to ask them, "Just take a bite, just try it," because that's not your responsibility, it's theirs. So that's number 1, and then number 2 is I see it so often, is just our eating routine or schedule, I guess I should say, and getting back to a consistency, right? Like, and understanding that, like, the concepts are similar for an adult. Grazing, snacking all day, you're less likely to want to show up to a meal and eat a full meal of protein and produce because one, you're really not that hungry because you've been snacking and grazing, and it just doesn't sound really enticing, right? So allowing our kids to actually build an appetite is okay. It's okay for them to experience hunger because when we think about it, they, especially in those early years, is they are still learning their hunger and fullness cues. They are really in tune with their own body and they what's the word I'm looking for? They're able to regulate it a lot better than we think that they are, but they're still learning, right? They're still learning what that feel like, what that sensation feels like. And so they rely heavily on us to hold that consistency in their eating routines. And what I mean by that is still offering them regular scheduled meals, right? So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and 2 to 3 snacks, depending on their overall activity level. And aside from that, when you hold that routine and you hold that consistency, they get to choose if they want to eat at any of those eating opportunities that you're providing. And if they don't eat, they have another opportunity at the next meal. They don't get to just snack throughout the day because then that puts them in charge of the what and the when, right? So it all kind of is rooted in one step roots into the next one. So feeding responsibilities is number one, eating routine is number two, and then number 3 is just making sure that what shows up on their plate is just as nutrient dense as what shows up on your plate. And remembering that the foods that our kids are eating are fueling their body for performance, both academic and athletic performance, and then just growth and development. So they still need quality nutrients like we do.
And I hear that from a lot of the adults I work with all the time. They're like, it's so hard, Jeremy, for me to hit my macros because I'm going to fix a different meal than the rest of the family. And I'm like, whoa, 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 time out. There shouldn't be a whole separate meal for you and the family, right? Like that primary protein source, whether it's lean beef, whether it's chicken, whether it's steak, whether it's salmon or your choice of fish, like that protein source should be there. And then there should be a produce there for everyone. Then after that, 100% could be variation based on goals, based on maybe likes and dislikes, that type of stuff, right? So I get that a lot, on the adult side of thing. People
Yeah.
are like, and that always triggers, and I think about that being like, well, they shouldn't be eating something different. You
And I think it's so again, it's a genuine confusion or it's a genuine like question just because like one especially if like the family is like has had eating behaviors and eating patterns, right, and now maybe mom and dad are trying to make changes. Well, our kids are a lot harder to break, so to speak, like, or they're a little bit more rooted in their habits, especially with foods and eating routines that um it might take a little bit of time for them to come around. For us, we can decide, right? Like, oh, I don't want to do this. But I'm going to start making these changes. For kids, like they're still learning developmental control or sorry, emotional control and all of the things. And so when you start to make a change on them, it is a change in their routine. It is a change in what is their normal consistency and it like can trigger some serious stress response. And so parents often are like, "Well, I can't make them another meal because I'm making this." And so I get it, right? But at the same time, to kind of the points that we talked about it earlier is like make the changes that you want to make, but be considerate of your kids' wants. So you don't have to cater to everything that they want. You can consider their suggestions, validate them, but this is what we're doing, and then offer something safe that you know that they're going to eat. So make
love
the
it.
changes and let them follow suit.
Okay, I got a couple more things.
Yeah.
One's going to be selfish. I feel like really I just invited you to be on the podcast to make sure that I'm on the right track. I feel like with this, but we do a couple things that help us out. So Katie can do fast food once a week. I can do fast food. We do that from a budget standpoint, right? But that's kind of been our rule of thumb is because yes, life gets busy. Now, when I say that, we're still making good choices, right? It's Chick-fil-A and it could be, yeah, they want the grilled nuggets, but they get, or sorry, if they get the regular nuggets, maybe they get the fruit, right?
Mhm.
If they want grilled nuggets, then they can have a small fry, right? So we kind of like,
Mhm.
make the best choices in that. So, personally, what do you think of that? One, so at most 2 days a week fast food, but still making good choices inside of that fast food.
Yeah, and so when we're eating out or we're personally and kind of how I teach is like allow them to kind of it is what it is, right? It's not going to be just like you teach too. That one meal is not going to make or break your progress, and it's more rooted in what you're doing every day else throughout the week. Like, are we being consistent with protein? And the more that you can like talk to them about like what's showing up on our plate and how food makes us feel, it is no different, right? You teach a lot to people about why protein is important, how it makes you feel, how it impacts performance as well as muscle capacity and so many other things. Same with the carbs and fats, right? They fuel our body differently than protein. Talking to them about how food makes us feel and helping them make that connection, they're more likely to make the decisions on their own. And so giving them that little bit of that autonomy when they are eating out, it's like they may naturally select the fruits on their own because they know how they make their body feel. And if they don't make a fuss about it. Like giving them a little bit of that control. Again, depending on how old your kids are, maybe your younger toddlers, we're not letting them pick, but trying to not have too many restrictions when you go out to eat, but just being mindful of, how we talk about it the rest of the week, if that makes
Love it.
sense.
No, I love it. One of our partners here at the Jerry Mullins podcast is Homegrown Lifting Company, and they cater to parents really for home gyms. Well, and I don't say parents, but I'm thinking in terms of parents, like they cater to people with home gyms, so not necessarily like commercialized gyms. Last question of the day. If you had to get one piece of equipment,
Oh.
oh, I'm going to do this double. Sorry. From you, from an athletic standpoint, if you had to get one piece of equipment only for you to train with, and you had to get one piece of equipment that you could work out with your kids, what would it be? And are they different?
Like, I can't have a set, it has to be one?
You could have a set, I
I would
guess.
say a set of dumbbells. If it could be an adjustable set, perfect, because then the whole family can use it.
Yep,
So I would say an adjust because that kinda answers question 1 and question
it
2,
does. Perfect.
adjustable
Yes.
set of dumbbells. But dumbbells are so underestimated because you can do so much with a, body weight in general, but then adding dumbbells just kind of increases the intensity. So definitely an adjustable set of dumbbells. I would say, um, for the kids, I just love to pepper my house with different pieces of equipment. If I had to pick one, I would pick a box, like a wooden box, because they can climb on it, they can jump on it, they can jump off of it. They create obstacle courses with it. It piques their creativity. So I would say a box. Uh,
Awesome. What would be good? You look into homegrown. They have dumbbells that you put the small bumpers on,
oh,
like
cool.
really small 5-pound bumpers. So you can actually have one, dumbbell or two dumbbells, but then have small weights. So you can adjust your weights that way.
Really
So it's
cool.
pretty cool. I've got one at home, and then I've got another set that we took to one of the units for the military. So cool. No, I was kind of thinking that got me thinking about like exercise standpoint. So
Yeah.
hey, I appreciate you. My mind right now, I want to take some notes after this because I'd like for you to come back on, that your schedule allows. Because you do have a niche, right? And I have come where I always say like the volume of people I'm coaching and the education I'm putting out, has really went into just from the scope of who's on like Team Alpha and age group I'm working with. I work with a lot of people that really were late 30s to their 60s. And I've really focused on like building that strength, building that cardiovascular fitness so that we can maintain a healthy long-term life. But I don't
Right.
talk a lot about like for kids and stuff. So if you're up to it, I'd love to have you on, as often as you can. That way you can talk about what you're doing and education. It just brings more education to the listeners.
Yeah, of course. This is my jam. Love to talk about it, so I could talk forever.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate you coming on. The listeners, as always, appreciate you guys listening. If you haven't left a review in a while or at all, please go leave us a review on whichever platform you're lifting on or you're lifting on. Ha! See, got me thinking lifting, right? Hey, I hope you're lifting on a platform. I know you're into lifting. Whatever platform you're listening on, leave us a review, and we appreciate you guys for being here. I hope you guys have a wonderful day.